Hi there, my name's Mike Willie. I'm from Oakland, Maine, and this is how to fix a broken valve spring without removing the head. Shortly after completing the rebuild of my 1947 Jeep CJ2A, I decided to take it from my garage over to the house. That's a distance about 20 miles. About 3 miles from the destination, I started hearing valve noise in the engine. And after a long rebuild, that was a bit discouraging, but I removed the left front fender and then the valve cover, and I could clearly see at that point that one of my brand new valve springs on the number 4 intake valve had broken. There was no apparent reason for the broken spring. All areas were lubricated, the valve was free to move, and the lifter was operating correctly. So now it was, how am I going to replace the spring without removing the head? Searching the CJ2 page forum, I found another owner who had the same problem a few months ago and was successful at replacing the spring without removing the head by getting as much room between the stem and the valve lifter to be able to mount the new spring, the retainer, and the locks. I was definitely going to give that a try. I removed the manifold to get more work room, covered the oil outlet holes to the oil pan so parts would not get lost down there, and removed the broken spring, the spring, retainer, and lock successfully. The spring was broken into 3 different parts. I used 2 different types of valve spring compressors for this job: an older flathead compressor, shown on the left, to get the new spring mounted between the valve stem and the lifter, and a larger overhead compressor to actually compress the springs to mount the retainer and the locks. The reason to use the larger overhead clamp is that it will lift the spring more vertically without catching the valve stem and pulling the stem along with it. In order to get the new spring on, turn the lash adjuster all the way down. Get as much space between the lifter and the valve stem as you can. I had between 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch. Others have had less. It will depend to some extent on how clean the engine is and how much room you have to push the valve up to the top of the head. Then take the new spring, rotate it onto the stem as far as it'll go. If you need to use a tool to do that, you can, but be careful not to scratch or dent or create any stress areas on the spring when you try to install it. Then use the flathead valve compressor to compress the spring enough so that you can snap it into position through that narrow gap. Once you have the spring on, you can install the spring retainer by pushing it through the same slot after you get the valve spring on, and then use the larger overhead compressor to compress the spring so the locks can be installed. You can hold the valve stem through the intake port. You'll just be holding it with friction from as it goes through up into the head, but usually that's enough to be able to compress the spring without taking the valve stem with it. And there you are. Now you can readjust the valve lash, put everything back together, and hopefully that'll get you back running. My name's Mike Willie. I'm from Oakland, Maine, and if you have any questions, you can send me an email at mwillie@gfgroup.net. Thanks to everybody on the forum for all of their help. This is my little contribution back to it. See you later.